Welcome, students, staff, alumni, friends, and elected officials to the first event of the newly established Tisch College Distinguished Speaker Series. We are inaugurating the series today with the third annual Alan D. Solomont Lecture on Citizenship and Public Service. Today's lecture format will be an interview, as Alan Solomont, Dean of Tisch College at Tufts University, will sit down with U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts to gain her perspectives on a range of issues important to the global community. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Dean Alan Solomont. Alan joined Tufts in an official administrative capacity as the Dean of Tisch College last January. But his legacy as a leader, alumnus, parent, and friend of Tufts spans more than 45 years. Alan is a former trustee, the founding chair of the Tisch College Board of Advisors, and has served as a visiting professor teaching political science. As Dean of Tisch College for the past 9 months, Alan has been guiding Tufts' civic engagement strategy for a new generation of students and faculty. This includes launching and overseeing the development and fundraising for the 1+4 Bridge Year Service Learning Program, a transformational experience that will be offered as a gap year for up to 50 incoming first-year students next fall. Prior to his deanship, Alan most recently served as the U.S. Ambassador to Spain and Andorra at the request of President Obama. Prior to his diplomatic service, Alan was appointed twice to serve as chairman of the bipartisan Board of Directors of the Corporation for National and Community Service, which is the federal agency that oversees all domestic service programs, including AmeriCorps, Learn and Serve America, VISTA, and Senior Corps. In fact, this past Friday, Tisch College hosted the 20th National Anniversary celebration of AmeriCorps at Tufts, which included a live simulcast with the White House. In addition, Alan is an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and political activist. He is recognized as a longtime leader in the Democratic Party, serving as its national finance chair from 1997 to 1998. At Tufts, we are proud of Alan's many accomplishments and delighted that he has chosen to spend the next phases of his career with us here on the Hill. Please join me in welcoming Dean and Ambassador Alan Solomont.
Thanks, Tony. Well, thank you, President Monaco, for the introduction. I'm delighted to be here at Tufts. I wanted to prove that I could hold a job for a little longer, so I'm hoping that my tenure here will prove to the world that I can hold employment. But I want to thank the President for his leadership and for his strong commitment to civic engagement. And on behalf of my colleagues at Tisch College and Tufts University, I want to welcome you all this afternoon to Tufts and to this first event of the Tisch College Distinguished Speaker Series featuring United States Senator Elizabeth Warren. I can think of no one with whom I'd rather begin this series than with today's featured guest. But before we get started, I want to thank Senator Warren's staff, the Office of Special Events at Tufts, and my colleagues at Tisch College for their hard work preparing for this event. This is the third edition of an annual lecture on citizenship and public service, which some colleagues and friends were kind enough to establish in my name, but it also provides the opportunity for Tisch College to launch a new initiative, a Distinguished Speaker Series, through which we will bring to Tufts important public figures from a variety of fields to engage with the Tufts community on the most serious issues facing our nation and the world. We already plan to welcome former Secretary of Health and Human Services Kathleen Sebelius in late October and Boston Mayor Marty Walsh in December. And we plan to host other distinguished speakers representing a variety of perspectives and points of view throughout the year. In addition to promoting active citizenship, Tisch College hopes through this series to promote informed citizenship. Since its founding by the Universalists in the 1850s, Tufts University has been committed to having an impact on the larger society, and civic engagement has been at the core of the university's character. Tisch College was founded 15 years ago to institutionalize that commitment and to ensure that a culture of active citizenship would continue to drive the university's mission in the 21st century. Civic engagement, as President Monaco has noted, is part of the university's DNA, and we believe that Tisch College is the repository of the genetic code. Our mission is to reach across the entire university to all 7 schools, so that regardless of their field of study, every Tufts student acquires the values, knowledge, and skills to be an active citizen. We do this work because we know that communities and nations and the world are stronger, more just, and more prosperous when citizens actively participate in civic and democratic life. An important part of civic engagement is political engagement, not just voting or volunteering on campaigns, but participating in local and national conversations about vital public issues that affect us all. That is why we are so pleased to welcome today's guest. Elizabeth Warren is the senior United States Senator from Massachusetts. She is a leading voice arguing for fairness in the American economy, and she is a tireless and fearless advocate for the nation's middle class and working families. Senator Warren was born and raised in Oklahoma. Her father worked as a maintenance man, and her mother answered the phones at Sears Roebuck. They worked hard so that she and her 3 brothers would have the opportunity to build successful lives. It should surprise no one who has followed the senator's career that she loved to argue, and she was pretty good at it. She was a state champion debater, and that earned her a scholarship to George Washington University. Senator Warren studied law at Rutgers University, and she became a law professor, first at Rutgers, at the University of Texas, the University of Pennsylvania, and eventually at Harvard University. She specialized in commercial and finance law, drawn to some of the most technical and challenging aspects of our legal system, but also those that would help her make a difference in the lives of American families. Elizabeth Warren led the charge to create and build the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the federal agency that helps regulate banks, credit unions, and other financial institutions in order to safeguard consumers from the kinds of predatory lending that led to the financial crisis in the first place. It was a hell of a fight in which she faced off against some of the most powerful interests in America. I think it's fair to say that more than one banker and lawmaker was taken aback by this unassuming law professor whose passionate convictions combined with a sharp wit turned C-SPAN into must-see TV. She took that same willingness to speak honestly about the struggles of American families and about the forces often aligned against them to the campaign trail. And in 2012, she challenged and defeated incumbent Senator Scott Brown to become the first female United States Senator in Massachusetts history. In Washington, she has continued her fight to expand access to opportunity for all Americans. Her first bill, the Bank on Students' Loans Fairness Act, aims to let students take out federally subsidized loans at the same low interest rates that some of the big banks enjoy. Although the bill hasn't passed, her voice and that of like-minded lawmakers has helped bring national attention to this critical issue. I just finished reading Senator Warren's autobiography, A Fighting Chance. I recommend it to all. It really is a compelling account of some of the political battles she fought, from the fight over bankruptcy law to a tough campaign for the United States Senate. But at its core, the book is a touching personal story. It is about mothers and daughters, daycare and dogs, aging parents, and cranky toddlers. The story of her own life that is a testament to what millions of Americans who've heard her speak have instinctively understood. Elizabeth Warren's commitment to strengthen and protect the middle class is deeply genuine. It springs from a lifetime of personal experience that have instilled in her the belief that everyone in America deserves a fighting chance and an even playing field on which to build their lives. We are delighted to host Senator Warren today, and I have no doubt we will benefit from her insights, her experience, and her infectious passion. Please help me welcome Senator Elizabeth Warren.
come on this side.
Oh, okay.
To the man in the tree.
Well, welcome.
That was nice, thank you.
You're very welcome.
That was very generous.
Oh, well deserved. In any event, let's get right to it.
Okay.
I was struck reading your book that your religious faith is a source of both comfort and motivation. You said that during the Senate race, prayer kept you in touch with the spirit that moved me into this race. Could you tell us about your favorite Bible verse, Matthew 25:40, and what it means? The Lord calls us to action, and it's what we do that matters most.
So this is the verse. Wow, what a place to start. So this is the verse where the shepherd, who is the Lord, is going to divide the goats and the sheep. And you don't want to be a goat. But the sheep are going to make it. And so the Lord divides them. But then the question is, the sheep ask, so why me? Why did I get put, how's this coming and going here? Why did I get put with the sheep instead of with the goats? And the Lord goes through all of the different parts. And I was hungry, and he fed me. I was naked, and he clothed me. I was in prison, and he visited me. And goes through the different parts about what you did. And the sheep say back, but we never saw you. We didn't see you. And the response of, I'm a little in and out. Yeah? Is it me? I sound good now. Whoa. Uh-huh. We're good? I'll lay it next to me here. Okay, good. All right. I was evidently sitting on it or something. Okay. So anyway, the question is, why me? And ultimately the response of the shepherd is, inasmuch as ye hath done it unto one of these, the least of thy brethren, ye hath done it unto me. And what that says to me is actually two things. The first is that there is God in every one of us, or Spirit or Lord or whatever you want to call it, and that must be honored. It is there in every human being. And the second thing it says to me is that the Lord doesn't call us simply to have good intentions. The Lord doesn't call us just to have a pure heart. The Lord calls us to get up and act. That's what separates the sheep from the goats. Can we have an amen on that? I believe that.
Well, so speaking of that,
yes.
Could you share with us some of your journey from humble roots in Oklahoma to marriage and motherhood at a young age, to law professor, eventually to the nation's leading advocate and warrior on behalf of consumers? What was it that lit the spark that prompted you to become such an active citizen?
It's a good way to frame the question, Dean, but it was never having a long path. It was always the piece in front of me. You know, I grew up in a family, like a lot of families, that had a lot of ups and downs. And when my father, I was 12, my three older brothers, I'm the baby in the family. I was referred to as the surprise. I was born,
pleasant surprise indeed.
Yeah. And born what was called back then late in life to my mother. And my three brothers were off all three of them were actually in the military at the time, and when my daddy had a heart attack. And we had this long stretch with no money coming in, the medical bills piled up, we lost the car, the station wagon, and we were right on the edge of losing our family's home. And I actually start the book with the day I walked into my folks' bedroom, and my mother had this black dress out, this dress that had hung in the closet ever since before I was born. And she was struggling to pull it on. It was just too tight by now. And she was pulling the zipper up and crying the whole time. But what she was crying about is she was not going to lose our house. And finally, she blew her nose and put on her high heels and put on some lipstick and walked to the Sears. She was 50 years old. She had never held a job outside the home, and she got a minimum wage job answering the phones at Sears. And that's what saved our family. Now, the lessons I took away from that are you get up and act. My mother was a hard woman. She was tough. And she loved us. She loved me. I know that. But she wanted me to marry well because she thought it was my only chance. And she thought I was a pretty iffy case. She was right. But what she showed me by her actions was that you get up and you do the best you can. And so kind of the way the story unfolds is that there was no money for college. So I got up and did. I got this book that listed all the colleges and said something about them, and I spotted 2 that identified that they had scholarships in debate. I was good in debate. And so I took my babysitting money. I went down to the 7-Eleven and got money orders to apply to these 2 colleges. And I applied to these 2 colleges with the notion that I would tell my parents someday before the day I was leaving for college that I was headed off to college. And because I'd heard about scholarships and I was sure I could do this. And then the bad news arrived that you had to have your parents' tax returns in order to apply for a scholarship and fill out this whole financial form. So it meant I had to tell them what I was up to. And my mother was completely opposed to my doing this. But my father, who was always very quiet, said, "Let her try, Polly." And it was another part of the lesson. You get out and you try. And so it really just kind of goes from there. So I get this great scholarship. I head off to George Washington University because they offered me more money than Northwestern. Too bad for you, Northwestern. But I head off to George Washington. I'm having a great time. And then the first boy I'd ever dated drops back into my life, proposes to me. It takes me about a nanosecond to say yes and drop out of college. Boy, I was smart at 19. Anyway, I end up going ultimately to a commuter college. Cost $50 a semester, University of Houston. And it opened another whole set of doors for me. I was a young mom. I'm moving around with his job. I end up going to a state law school. But it's always, and this is the key, I never forget in every part of this. I had to do my part, and I did. But I grew up in an America that was investing in kids like me. I grew up in an America that was making those things possible. I grew up in an America that had good, strong public schools. I grew up in an America where my mother could work a minimum wage job and support a family of 3. That's what you could do on a minimum wage job back then. I grew up in an America that invested enough in higher education that there were opportunities to go to a school that cost $50 a semester. When I got my scholarship, it was an America that invested in student loans so that they were subsidized. And for those who were willing to go into things that were regarded part of the national defense, like science and math and teaching, then they'd forgive 10% of the principal every year that you did it. And for people like me who went into special needs teaching, we got a special bonus, 15% a year. That was an America that was building a future for its kids. And that's what gets me up every day to day. We are losing that America, and we got to fight to get it back.
I'm going to give you a chance to tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, I know.
You love teaching. I assume you miss it. But an Esquire magazine profile entitled "Elizabeth Warren is the Teacher" suggests that you're still the teacher. Charlie Pierce writes, about the near collapse of the US economy in 2008. He said, "The country, it seemed, had awakened one morning to find that its entire economy was headed over a cliff, and almost nobody knew how it happened. She, Elizabeth Warren, knew, and she began to teach again." Can you describe what you saw coming and how the economic crisis of 2008 happened?
Yeah. So this starts with, here's how we'll do it. There are 3 periods of consumer credit. That's actually what this is going to turn on. Period 1 dates from the Code of Hammurabi to 1980. Think about that. Passed straight through the Bible, right? Old Testament, New Testament, we got all the parts. What's that part? Usury laws. Usury laws are like the very first consumer protection. And they say, in effect, there's just a cap on how much you get to charge people. When they're in trouble and they got to borrow money, you only get to go so high. And that was the law. In 1980, it was effectively repealed. We could talk about how this happened, but it just happened. It was a Supreme Court decision and a little thing that passed through Congress, and bingo. And deregulation was in the air. You could smell it, right? Well, what some of the biggest financial institutions in this country smelled was opportunity to make money. And so it takes a little time, but over the next 20 years, they start figuring out you can make a lot of money by cheating people. Dang. You can trick them on credit cards. You can put, little extra funny twists and turns in how the credit card works. And you can take profits that were like this, and you could turn them into profits that are like this. I'll give you an example of this. The Bank of America credit card in 1980 was about 1.5 pages long. By 2002, 2003, it's about 30 pages long, the average credit card. Believe me, the additional 28.5 pages were not for your benefit. So the credit card companies are like raking in money like you can't believe. The mortgage companies look over and say, woo, we could do some of that. And the mortgage products start changing. And so what had been a family's real lifeline, you take out a mortgage, you pay it down over time, it steadies you in hard times, became, I actually wrote about this, I called it in a book, the cement life raft. It was starting to sink families. There were things called teaser rate mortgages, mortgages that you couldn't possibly afford other than the first 2 years, and they had these incredibly high fees. They were producing huge profits. So I started going, I really was just, my eyelashes were like frizzed over this. This was unbelievable because we had the largest financial institutions in this country were building a profit model around cheating people, around tricking them, around getting them to sign up for things that, yes, they were legal, but they knew that people weren't going to be able to pay these things, and you could see the debt. The debt was just going up, and family incomes, they were not going up. So it was not enough to make profits off these things directly. What many of these same large financial institutions did is they started bundling these mortgages and selling them out into the marketplace to pension funds, to municipalities, to all kinds of people, to investors, so that it was like selling boxes of grenades with the pins already pulled out. You don't know exactly when they're going to explode, but when they start to, there's going to be hell to pay. And so they start putting these things out, and this is the period leading up in the early 2000s. And I keep talking about this, other people are talking about this, and then we all know what happened. They started exploding. And when they started exploding, that is when the families had refinanced and refinanced and refinanced, the market had boomed, and all of a sudden, all it had to do was just flatten out a little bit. And then the families couldn't refinance anymore, and then the whole thing starts its downward turn. It took our whole economy over a cliff. And that was the story. That is the story of what went wrong.
So after the greatest financial crisis since the Great Depression, and then the bailouts and the stimulus package and the Dodd-Frank Act, are middle-class families any better protected today from another financial catastrophe?
So the answer is both yes and no. Let's do the yes, because that last story was such a downer. So part of the question that comes out of this, and boy, let's do this one on civic engagement. Part of the question that comes out of this is, what is going to be our response? Everybody knows we got to change something. We cannot do this boom bust. I say everybody knows. Jamie Dimon actually goes to Washington and testifies, hey, these boom bust things, they just happen every, so often. No, they don't happen every so often.
A Tufts alumnus.
A Tufts alumnus. Hope he gave you a lot of money. So what happens? We're going to do some new financial regulation, right? So we're about to do some new financial regulation. A lot of this, as you say, this big parts of Dodd-Frank, what we're going to do about how you package these loans, how you sell them, what happens on Wall Street. But the key part from my point of view, the part we've got to talk about, is how you could get away with selling literally trillions of dollars worth of products that were just designed to trick people, that were just designed to trap them, that were just designed to cheat them, and sometimes flatly broke the law that was out there, the little bit of law that was out there. So here was the problem structurally. 7 different agencies in Washington each owned a piece of consumer financial protection. It was not a first priority for anybody. Everybody had another first priority. The OCC, let's keep those banks profitable, right? The Federal Reserve, let's think about monetary policy. Nobody made it a first priority. So I had this idea, and this idea was, let's build a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Take all the law that's there. You don't even need a whole lot more new law. Take all that's law that's there, put it with one agency, give that agency the authority to enforce the law, give it the power to get out and monitor these markets and try to get them back in balance, and then hold it accountable for doing exactly that. So I go to Washington. The story is good. I go to Washington. Tell me if you don't want me to tell it. But I go to Washington, and I start trying to talk to people. The crash has occurred. I start trying to talk to people in Washington about this agency. And so they almost uniformly say 2 things to me. The first one is, that's a great idea. You could actually make a difference. You could actually change how these markets work and get these markets, you just try to get them level again. Get stuff where people can read it and understand it and make sensible decisions about the money. That could make a real difference. And the second thing they all said to me was, don't do it. And the reason they say don't do it is they say, because you cannot possibly win. You will never win this, because the financial institutions will make it their #1 goal to kill this agency. Now, I heard that as try harder. I like read too many Nancy Drew novels growing up or something, Intrepid girl policymaker. So I decide we're going to do this. Now, here's how this works. The big financial institutions spent more than $1 million a day for more than a year lobbying against financial reform. And their #1 target was to kill off this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I tell a lot of the story in the book, so you've read this one recently. So what do we have on our side? We just had our voices. We had our votes. We got organized on our side. We did that. The conference calls. I mean, I know that sounds boring, but man, first conference call had 2 people on it, which I think legally is not a conference call. But 2 becomes 4, and 4 becomes 10, and 10 becomes 20. Ultimately, we got groups involved. God bless the AFL-CIO, SEIU, AARP, NAACP, La Raza, who stepped up and said, consumer financial products have not been our first issue, but we get how it affects people. They got strong, they got behind the agency, and at the end of the day, we actually got a good, tough agency passed into law. That is amazing. Go ahead, it's good. Okay, so now if you were just feeling like you're going to go home and you're going to say, God, what kind of nerd have I turned into? I was just applauding for creation of an agency. Yay. Some about that agency. That little agency has been up and operational for about 3 years now, and it has already forced the biggest financial institutions to return directly to consumers more than $4 billion that they cheated people out of. That's pretty damn good. Pretty good. So, I am going to link this up. So, in the sense of, could we have a financial crisis of the same kind that occurred before? I think the answer is no. We've got an agency out there watching it on the mortgages. You just can't do the same kind of crazy stuff that was being done all through the 2000s up through the beginning of 2009. You can't do that anymore. And we've got a good watchdog. But remember that $1 million a day? They're still out there. And so it's the systemic risks that still leave America's families at risk. The largest financial institutions, the Big Five, are substantially bigger than they were in 2008. Remember, they were too big to fail back then? They're bigger now. And they continue to load up on risks. So now they're trading in aluminum futures. That makes you feel better, right? And they're trying to figure out, you know, they have ships going through the Straits of Hormuz. Think about what that means to try to regulate these big bank holding companies that have all of these cross guarantees, tangled mess. Systemically, within the financial services area, that's the key risk. And then I got to say one more, and then I'll quit talking. And that is, but overall, it's about the hollowing out of America's middle class. And it's the pounding on every single part of what it takes to build a secure economic future. Education, the kind of infrastructure that means there are going to be good jobs here at home, the kind of investment in research that means we are truly innovating as a society, that we're not going to drown ourselves in medical debts and an aging population. Every piece on this is working against America's families right now. So I'm scared.
So after creating this agency, you decided to run for the United States Senate.
Yeah.
We watched it from afar, but it was a hell of a race. And you did.
That's one way to describe it.
You won by 8 points, but I
did.
I wonder what your advice, because we want to also engage the audience. So I'll just ask you this. Why did you, well, how was it running for office? But more importantly, what's your advice to young people who want to impact public policy, who want to contribute, and especially to this generation who absolutely want to serve others, but don't seem to want to be engaged in politics?
Oh, so the first part for me is just easy, and the answer is just do it. Go out and volunteer. If you volunteer on a campaign, volunteer with an agency, an organization that's doing something. And if you can't volunteer for something already established, build it yourself. That's what we do. And you just do it. Here's the amazing thing. There are so many people who will help you if you'll just reach out there and try it. I found that out. I found it out in every part of my life, but I really found it out when I ran for the United States Senate. How many people said, you take the position out on point, but I'll be there to help you. I'll stand behind you. I'll help make this happen. And it really is a reminder. There's something good in what we want to do. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And you can do this. You can. You just have to be willing to just step up. It's a little scary. It makes your heart beat hard. You hit the microphone. But you try it. But the second part, we got to talk about this, and that is about the part about politics and voting. I never thought I wanted to be involved in politics. I always thought, you know, my job is I'll do the research and I'll throw it in, you know, and then what you guys do with it is what you do with it. But then I saw what they did with it. And I didn't like parts of it, or I thought it ought to be done this way. And I started getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the fight. And what I've come to see is that this country really is at a crossroads. This country works incredibly well for those who have lots of money. It works incredibly well for big corporations. I mean, it's working. They're doing well. You probably have seen the numbers on this. And they can promise great things to their children and their children's children because of how well it's working. For the rest of America, this country is not working so well. And Washington is not working at all. And here's the thing. There's a reason for that. On the other side, and it is the other side from my perspective on this, the rich and the powerful, what do they got? They got what money buys. That means access in Washington. That means opportunities. That means that at every meeting, the point of view of the rich and the powerful always gets fully and articulately represented. And that's true in the halls of Congress. It's true in every federal agency. Heck, it's even true when groups get together to talk about issues. Always, always, always. Representation and the argument. Let's just tilt the playing field just a little bit to make sure that the people who have paid representation get protected a little more, get a little more in the game. That's what they've got, the benefits of what money buys, and that's lobbying and influence. What's on the other side? All we got is our voices and our votes. And if we don't use them, this country fundamentally changes. This country that was built on a democracy, on the idea that it's opportunity for everyone, even a kid whose dad has a heart attack, everyone, new Americans, kids whose parents didn't graduate from high school, kids whose parents did but are struggling, kids who need a second chance before they can make it through, and sometimes a third. The idea of what America is, we get together and we help build those opportunities for the future, and the only way that's going to happen is if people stay engaged in politics, in the issues, and they get out and vote.
Thank you. Senator, you know, there's one other question that I have to ask you. Mm-hmm. It's probably on the minds of many people in the audience. There's a lot of talk about it. What's your favorite movie?
Casablanca. It's my fave. I love that movie. Bruce and I, every New Year's Eve, boy, this will tell you how dull some people can be. We get a good bottle of wine, good cheeses and fruit, and we watch Casablanca again every New Year's Eve and ring in the new year.
Louis, I hope this is the beginning of a wonderful friendship.
I love it.
And now I would invite, I think there are microphones on either side. If people have questions, come. Let's try to keep the questions brief, and we'll get through a bunch of them. And we'll start with the first person at the microphone. And just introduce yourself, what class?
All right, thank you. My name is Daniel Weaver. I'm sophomore class of 2017. Senator Warren, you may know that Tufts part-time faculty recently unionized and are currently negotiating a contract here. I wanted you to speak to the current situation of part-time faculty, Boston-wide, maybe nationally, and the importance of recognizing their contribution to our education through a fair contract.
Oh, okay, so you're in. You guys pulled this off. You know, I love teaching. But to be a good teacher, you've got to have the opportunity to do it. And at the university level, that means you've got to have the opportunity to prepare for classes, to be able to meet with your students, to be able to have office hours, to do all the things that are more than just being those few minutes in the classroom. It's the full experience of being a teacher. And this idea of dividing teaching so that some of the teachers are able to do that, which means some of the students in some of their classes get the benefit of the full teaching experience and others don't, I just think is fundamentally wrong from an educational point of view. All of us who are teachers want the chance to do the right thing. And this is one of those places where you negotiate a good contract, partly, obviously, for the person who's doing the work, but partly to make sure that you get to do the kind of work that education is all about. So I'm a strong supporter here at Tufts, here in Massachusetts, and all across the country. Good for you guys.
Over here.
Hi, my name is Lior Applecrab. So you spoke about education and how the country's dedication to education has changed. And Daniel just asked about part-time faculty, and I'm wondering if you could expand on how part-time faculty and the changes that are trying to be made in that connects to changes that need to be made in higher education in general, and how this can shed light on that larger problem.
So, look, you guys, it's no secret. From the things I've already said, and if any of you have read my book, if any of you have seen what I've done for most of my life, I am deeply committed to higher education. And that's true whether we're talking about technical school after high school, community colleges, state universities, private universities, graduate education. I'm the beneficiary. Education opened 1 million doors for me that never would have been there. But we are facing a real crisis in this country. We say two things simultaneously to young people. One is, you gotta have a college degree to even have a shot at being middle class. Just the shot, just the ticket. And then we say, and good luck paying for it, you're on your own. Prices are going through the roof. And I'll get my part in if you'll forgive me on this, and that is, and the federal government that stepped up when I was a kid by subsidizing the cost of college, subsidizing the student loans so that we'd all have a chance, not just to go to college, but to graduate from college and take jobs that didn't always pay as well, to be able to be on your feet financially. That federal government has completely shifted so that today the federal government is making tens of billions of dollars in profits off the backs of students. And this, in my view, is just backwards. That's why I've got a student loan bill out there. We've got 58 senators on board, at least to move the bill forward. But the idea is to reduce the interest rate outstanding on student loans. This is what really just kills me. Just down to the point where the government only makes a small profit. That shows you. I mean, this is how much compromise is already built into it. But I want to say by way of that, I don't want to leave the parts in between because you asked about them. It's every part of what it means to have access to an education. And that's talking about what's happening in middle school. Dean Solomont was just telling me about your daughter is teaching in 2nd grade. Here, you can jump in.
My daughter is teaching through Teach for America at a 2nd grade, a charter school, 2nd graders in a charter school in Denver, and try to instill in them the passion and desire to go to college.
That's right, because it's not available to everyone if kids don't know about it early, if they don't know to get into college, if they don't know to apply for college, if they don't know to take the right courses. For people who then go to college, who are first in their families to go to college, what that transition is like. We have to be designing colleges, and colleges are adapting, need to adapt, so that we get costs under control, so that we have lots of different educational opportunities that are available. But we have to understand, at its core, we call on colleges to adapt, to move, to change, to educate our students, but never forget, this country has a responsibility to help with the education of its students. And part of that is the financial support for it through student loans. Part of it is through accreditation. I say this because I'm going to do my one quick off to the side. I want you to hear this. 10, 25, 50. 1 in every 10 college students in America today is in a for-profit college. They get 25% of the federal student loan money and other student aid, and they are now experiencing 50% of all of the defaults because so many of them are ending their time either with no diploma at all or with a piece of paper that's not recognized in the job market. This is something the Department of Education could do more on, but I raise this by way of saying we got a lot of pieces that need to be fixed in higher ed. It's going to be up to you and me to try to fix them. But we cannot become discouraged on this task. This is the way that we open 1 million doors for every kid in America. So that's it. Thank you.
Hello, Senator Warren. My name is Hanya Curry-Trapper, and I have campaigned for you. I'm very proud constituent. I actually have a question. You had mentioned representation when you were talking today. I was wondering, I'm a Palestinian American, and I was wondering, have you ever met with a Palestinian who has lived in the occupied territories, who has experienced their daily life in the occupied territories over the 40-year-plus military occupation that they've been living in? And when you made that statement that you did around Israel and Palestine. Thank you. You have met with, and so, I appreciate the fact that you always align yourself with the underdog, or the people that are being repressed in everything in America and your domestic policy, and I really truly appreciate all that you do, and that's why I was so vigilant in campaigning for you. And but I feel like I'm not really understanding how that is aligning with the.
So no,
you understand.
So no, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate your raising this. Look, I am very much committed to the two-state solution. We have talked about this for a very long time. And I worry every time a rocket is thrown, every time another piece of land is seized, that we move further away from that instead of closer to a two-state solution. I believe in a two-state solution because I believe that both peoples in the region have a right to a government that supports them, that they can live safely. That's what it should be. That's where we should be aiming. I feel very frustrated about what happens in any part of war. It is not moving us in the right direction in that region, and I want to see us move in the right way, and I think that's what people of goodwill,
that's what people on both sides want.
Including you, I think that's what people on both sides want, and I very much hope that we can all try to pull to get there in that direction.
I appreciate that.
No, thank you.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
I'll try to be shorter. Okay.
Eva Mosley, I'm not a student, I'm not an alumna, but I was a faculty wife. I was also a Holocaust refugee, and I'm extremely concerned that Jews don't do to another people what was done to them.
I think that's fair.
You recently said that you believe that Israel has a right to self-defense. Do you also believe that the Palestinians have a right to self-defense?
Of course. So, and the answer is yes. The direction we need to be moving is not to more war. The direction we need to be moving, as I said, I believe we need to move to a two-state solution where both peoples can be secure and safe within their borders. So I'm there.
Well, there's more to be said another time.
Okay, I'm going to, could you pass me that bag?
Oh, don't we have time for one more? One
It's
more?
up. Yes,
Okay,
one more question.
One more?
Okay.
Hi, I'm
Make it
Leah.
good.
I was on your campaign actually, so I am a big fan.
Thank you.
But I think that there's still more to be said.
Oh, I love this. I'm a big fan, but.
You said you support a two-state solution. You said this, but you specifically apologized for Israeli actions attacking schools and hospitals, and you're going on the congressional Israel trip, which we all know is, like AIPAC alignment is what that is. So as a progressive, as someone who wanted you to come and be a progressive, how can you say that what you're putting forward on Israel is progressive?
Look, you can do whatever characterization you want of it, but listen only to my words. I didn't apologize for anyone. I made clear what my view is. I don't want to see us, anyone, kill more people. I think it's a very bad idea. I don't know how to say this any more clearly. I want to see us move. I want to see the world support Israel and the Palestinians as they move toward a two-state solution in which everyone can be safe within their borders. That's all I want to see. And that's what I'm looking for. And I very much hope, but I do want to be clear on this, because I don't want to feel at cross purposes. I hope that that's where we will put our energy. I'm really concerned that that's not the direction that the Middle East is headed right now. I am very concerned about what's happening in Israel. But bombing each other is not moving in the right direction. And I want to see it stop. And I don't want to see it resume. I think the only way we get to a solution there is we get to a negotiated solution among the parties. And ultimately, the United States can't negotiate the solution. It has to be the parties who negotiate the solution.
I'm going to try to lighten the mood for just a moment, and as we say goodbye and thank you to the senator, one of the things that is very clear from reading about her life is what a devoted grandmother she is.
I am.
To her three, Octavia, Lavinia, and Atticus.
Check those names out.
So we have for each of them, so that they will aspire to be Tufts Jumbos. There are three of them.
Wonderful, thank you.
And for you, you write in your book that you fell in love with your husband because of or you were attracted to your husband because of his great legs, and you asked him to teach you to play tennis.
That's right, he's a tennis pro.
And he said that you were the worst pupil he ever had.
That's right.
So if you are still working on your game, this will keep the sun out of your eyes.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
And
perfect gifts. Thank you.
And we'll give you the bag. And if I could just say, as a concluding comment, you also write about your early experiences with Senator Kennedy. And I have no doubt that your memory of him and the model that he set informs your work in the Senate. I was a great admirer and even a friend of Senator Kennedy's, and I have to tell you, he is very proud that you are sitting in the Senate seat that he once occupied.
That's very kind of you to say that. It means the world to me. Thank you, dear. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Put on the visor for a minute for the picture.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll walk out here.